you ever thought to yourself, who the hell would buy these? I mean, come on, horse armor, single player microtransactions, Diablo's Immortal's existence, and $500 skins. Despite pay to win mechanics and ridiculous skin prices, they still sell. We've seen the outrage online, but we still see players drop crazy amount of money on these in-game purchases. So, although many of us hate it, financially it works. Today, we're going to dive into why this may be, and go through a few games that do it right and the ones that do it wrong. Go through some games that have a bright, vibrant community with the potential of becoming a legendary game, but the hopes come burning down and dying after being infected with pay-to-win cash shops. But first, let's start with the difference between single-player and multiplayer microtransactions. Multiplayer tend to be more well-received. This is mainly because we can understand that these games need ongoing funding to stay alive. Betting $10 on a cool skin or even $20 on a legendary skin feels justifiable when it doesn't impact the gameplay. But not all multiplayer games get it right. Some cross the line into pay-to-win territory, where you can spend money for power or progression. This happens with many EA games and isn't too uncommon in the MMORPG space. Now with single player games, microtransactions in my opinion shouldn't really be a thing. We all remember Bethesda doing the infamous Horse Armor DLC. It became a joke because it offered so little value, but at least it was only cosmetics. Single player microtransactions have gotten so bad now. Just take a look at Assassin's Creed Odyssey, where Ubisoft designed the game to push players towards buying XP boost and purposely slowing the pacing to an unbearable level just to make you pay. But not all single player microtransactions are problematic. Take a look at two of Capcom's most recent games, Devil May Cry 5 versus Dragon's Dogma 2. Devil May Cry 5 does let players buy red orbs to upgrade their characters, but is entirely optional and doesn't impact the gameplay or enjoyability of the game. Many who played the game, including myself, would agree that you can earn the orbs pretty easily in the game. While we all would prefer it not be a thing and just not be there, it did almost feel like the devs just tacked it on to keep the big bosses happy. Contrast this with Capcom's most recent game, Dragon's Dogma 2, and it definitely pushed past that line that players were willing to accept. Take the Tome of Metamorphosis. Initially, the tome was primarily available as a microtransaction, which sparked backlash for feeling like a necessary feature locked behind a paywall. In response, Capcom increased the tome's availability in-game, but the damage to players' trust was already done. This highlights the fine line between monetization that doesn't really impact the gameplay and feels optional versus ones that do, pushes past that line. Now, let's talk about why people keep buying microtransactions, even when many would deem them paid to win, exploitative. Here are some psychological tactics that game devs use and try to get you to buy. First, FOMO. These items often disappear after a short event. If you don't buy it now, you might never see it again. Let's take a look at when League of Legends announced that they would be selling an Ahri skin for basically $500 and making it a limited time purchase. Of course, there was outrage and even a movement to ban the champion in-game so no one could use the skin, but as we all know, it still sold insanely well. By utilizing FOMO and how prestigious the skin was, they were able to make millions off the skin. And then, let's address one of the most controversial aspects of microtransactions and how they sometimes feel like gambling. Loot boxes and gacha systems are the center of this debate. These mechanics offer random rewards, creating the same psychological triggers as gambling. When players open a loot box, they experience and anticipate the potential of winning big, followed by a dopamine hit when they get what they want or frustration when they don't. It's no coincidence that game devs hire psychologists and behavioral experts to design these systems. Blizzard has been criticized for using psychological principles in games like Diablo Immortal to maximize spending. These experts analyze player behavior to create mechanics that keep players coming back, whether it's through the thrill of random rewards or the fear of missing out on limited offers. Yet, despite Diablo Immortals being hated by many and received poor reviews, financially this game was successful by using FOMO as mentioned before. Then to add on another tactic, the sunk cost fallacy. As players have already invested money into the game, they go into a mindset that it would be a waste to not spend more to keep improving. They then add a confusing currency system that adds more smoke and mirrors to the mix. And finally, to top it off, the game is pay to win if you want to be competitive in the leaderboard. We have a perfect blend of an exploitive game that milks the players for their money and then eventually ends up dying as no one actually plays the game. This has led to ethics and legal concerns. Some countries like Belgium and Netherlands have outright banned loot boxes, labeling them as gambling. Others like China have implemented strict regulations requiring games to disclose the odds of receiving rare items. These measures highlight the growing awareness of how exploitive these systems can be. Speaking of China, something I also want to go over is how microtransactions are viewed differently between the East and the West. Generally, Eastern markets are far more accepting of microtransactions, while Western players are heavily scrutinized or priced. While with Eastern gamers, owning an expensive skin can be considered a status symbol. Going back to our $500 League of Legends skin, while there's certainly a lot of negativity around it from Western players, the East really didn't care. When taking a look at the RE banning boycott, her ban rate jumped roughly from 8% to 24% in North America versus China's 4% ban rate jumping to 6%. We can also take a look at mobile gaming being bigger in Eastern countries and how these games are generally more accepted to be paid to win. The affordability and accessibility of mobile gaming makes it a dominant platform, particularly in the East. We all remember the infamous Diablo Immortal announcement.
Have phones?
Yeah, you guys all have phones, right?
They're right. Everyone does have a phone, and that's why mobile gaming has exploded globally. Mobile games are designed around microtransactions, whether it's energy systems or gotcha mechanics in games like Genshin Impact. The goal is to keep players spending. These systems thrive in markets where smartphones are more common than high-end gaming PCs, like in the East versus the West. But what happens when a game takes it too far and the microtransactions start impacting the gameplay? Old school RuneScape versus RuneScape 3 is a good example of the impact. And yes, before RuneScape fans mentioned the combat changes made a big impact, we all agree, but for the sake of this video, let's just focus on the microtransactions. RuneScape 3 over time introduced mechanics like treasure hunt keys and XP boost, allowing players to bypass the in-game grind by paying real money. This hasn't been received well, as the grind and progression of what makes RuneScape feel like RuneScape has been diminished. In contrast, old school RuneScape was launched as a community-driven effort to preserve the original gameplay experience. Part of old school's success is the rejection of these pay-to-win mechanics. And taking a look at another MMO, ArcAge. When the game initially launched, it was well received as a enjoyable sandbox MMO RPG, but after patch 1.2, the game introduced a cash shop that allowed players to purchase gameplay impacting items, some of which couldn't even be attained in-game. This gave paying players a substantial advantage, effectively locking free-to-play players out of the competitive systems. Rare material and gear also became available for purchase, further widening the gap between paying and non-playing players, resulting in many players abandoning the game, citing unfair systems as a reason for this downfall. But how do we do microtransactions right? Microtransactions don't have to be exploitive. When implemented thoughtfully, they can enhance a gameplay experience and allow players who enjoy the game to support developers. Here's a few takeaways. Cosmetic purchases are great. It allows you to make the character the way you want. No major impact to gameplay. Even despite League of Legends' recent insanity with the prices of certain skins, it still has an impact to the gameplay, and there's a reason that League of Legends is basically the #1 game for all these years. Battle passes can also be good methods to do this. Take Marvel Rivals' well-received battle pass system. Battle passes can provide players with values beyond the regular microtransactions and give developers a much more predictable method of gaining income. It also works much better for players in comparison to loot boxes, as it doesn't have that RNG gambling feel to it. It's also important to make microtransactions feel optional. Players shouldn't have to feel like they are required to purchase them to feel competitive or able to play the game in a way they enjoy. So, at the end of the day, while there are definitely some horrible psychological tactics that developers purposely put in these games to make you spend more, when done correctly with respect for players, they can be a great way to support developers.